On April 8th, 1974, the late Hank Aaron hit his 715th home run in the fourth inning against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Babe Ruth's previous record of 714 had stood for almost 40 years. It had seemed unbreakable. That was quite a day. Some of us probably remember it, but it's important to realize that Henry Louis Aaron did not become Hammer and Hank overnight. And neither was his baseball career an uninterrupted series of heroic moments. He had his ups and downs. Some seasons were better than others. Aaron played his first major league game for the then Milwaukee Braves on April 13th, 1954. That was almost 20 years before his record-breaking day. He struck out at his first at-bat, and the next one, and the next one. In fact, he went 0-5 in that first game. Hammer and Hank finished his baseball days with a .305 batting average. That means he got a hit not quite one time out of three. The highest lifetime average still belongs to Ty Cobb. He hit .366, and yet that, too, is just a shade better than 1 for 3. You see, even the very best hitters strike out, pop out, or get tagged out about twice as often as they get on base. Like all great sluggers, the fear of striking out never made Aaron hesitate. He said, "My motto was always to keep swinging. Whether I was in a slump or feeling badly or having trouble off the field, the only thing to do was keep swinging." As you may know, Hank Aaron passed into eternal life on January 22nd. I'm not sharing this reflection from nostalgia only and from what I see around this diocese. I believe that his words have been serving as our own unspoken motto. We've been going through some rough times over the past year. The coronavirus pandemic has forced us to rethink and to redesign our approaches to worship and to ministry, with some stops and starts through trial and error. We've been doing just that. We've doubled down on maintaining our connection to Christ and to one another with available technologies. The Diocesan Council voted to forgive congregational asking for most of the year. Not one but two hurricanes came ashore in and roared through our diocese. People were displaced, structures were damaged, debris littered our landscape, infrastructure was shattered, and even the basic necessities of life could be hard to find. And we stepped up. Initially, we provided short-term relief with gift cards, food, and temporary shelter. Long-term recovery work is now underway and will continue for at least a couple of years. I'm grateful to Archdeacon Lois Mayberry and to Joy Owensby for their leadership and for those who have stepped up to work with them. In addition, your diocesan council responded with financial help to congregations. We were not frozen into inaction by fear, shock, or discouragement. We just kept swinging. Honestly, I could not be more proud to be your bishop. In tough times, you've shown what makes you who you really are. Actually, it's not a what that makes you who you are. It's a who. It's Jesus. We are Jesus followers. And to quote the old song, they will know we are Christians by our love. We follow Jesus into the world as his ambassadors, his instigators, his catalysts of love. This is not an easy calling. For starters, Jesus never told us to love only the people we find lovable. By example, he taught us to forgive the unrepentant, to turn the other cheek, to embrace people who seem strange to us, and gulp, to love our enemies. In other words, Jesus really meant it when he said that if you want to love God, you have to love your neighbor. and everybody is your neighbor. Love is not just a feeling, you see. It's more than affection. Love is acting like your own well-being cannot be separated from the well-being of everybody else. This is all just a bunch of abstract, sweet-sounding nonsense unless we genuinely get to know the real people that God has actually put right in front of us. And that's pretty hard. In other words, love begins by genuinely listening to somebody else, to the needs, fears, and hard truths that others bring to our attention. Love always responds realistically to how things actually are. So in order to get serious about following Jesus into the world, we have to take a look at the demographics of our ministry setting. The population of our state is growing slightly, but that growth is decidedly uneven. Within the borders of our diocese, only 3 parishes have experienced growth: Calcasieu, Lafayette, and Bossier. The rest of our parishes have stagnated or declined in population. The number of residents in quite a few is sharply down. Natural growth comes from having more births than deaths. In our state, those 2 rates are beginning to converge. Additionally, more people move out of Louisiana than move in. For instance, from 2018 to 2019, we lost 11,000 residents to outmigration. That rate is expected to climb. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the under 60 population is shrinking in Louisiana. By the year 2030, they estimate that the over 60 crowd will represent 25% of the overall population. That's a 25% increase. Most of our congregations are overwhelmingly white, and yet blacks comprise 32% of our state's population. So what does all this mean? First, there isn't a single answer. Each congregation has its own specific ministry setting. A more granular analysis for each will be required in order to arrive at a concrete strategy for spreading the gospel. Canon John Bedingfield can teach each congregation how to use the tools available to do this kind of close research. Nevertheless, I can point a few things out. I frequently hear from congregational leaders that they want to attract more young people, especially young families. This makes all the sense in the world if your surrounding community includes this demographic. And for some of our churches, this is absolutely true, but for some of our congregations, the growth population has gray hair. Well, or hair that would be gray, but for frequent trips to the hair salon. In such circumstances, it makes sense to develop ministries devoted to the spiritual and pastoral needs of middle and later age people. That's not to say, folks, that younger people should be ignored. However, the gift you have to offer to everyone is an intergenerational community, not necessarily a sizzling hot young adult group. The challenge will be to make genuine space for younger leaders to influence the life of the congregation. The absence of black people in our pews points to a deep, abiding social divide, and it stands as a calling to all of us to work on relationships. Many of our neighbors, and I mean nearby neighbors, are people of color, and yet we do not know them, much less worship with them. Connecting with our neighbors of color as equal partners in making our communities a better place is an act of love, the kind of love that Jesus models for us. Working to understand subtle forms of racism, not just the gross white supremacy so easily identified, is love work. Let's not start by just asking people of color to come to our church. Instead, let's begin by working together on challenges facing us all. Partner with nearby schools and nonprofit organizations like United Way. They will help us learn about our local challenges and invite us to join them in addressing them. Connect with a retirement facility, a local fire station, or police department. Ask how we can offer ongoing support for their ministry. I'm pleased to share with you that we're already doing this kind of careful thinking about Camp Partner. A task force is looking at ways not only to sustain our summer camping program, but also to expand camp's ministry in response to the needs of the state. As I mentioned earlier, we're all still pushing through this pandemic and digging out from 2 hurricanes. In addition to that, years of declining numbers in every mainline denomination have made many of us feel like we're in a long batting slump. But we have to keep swinging. We have to keep growing into the church of this time and this place. You see, that's where Jesus always shows up. Here and now, in this time and this place, and He shows up through you and me. I know that we can get discouraged and just plain tired. But listen to these words from the collect for the feast day of Blessed Ansgar. Keep your church from discouragement in the day of small things, knowing that when you have begun a good work, you will bring it to a fruitful conclusion. In other words, keep swinging. Sometimes you're going to miss, but you'll connect eventually. And Jesus will take it from there. I'll close by quoting another song, one oft cited by our presiding Bishop Michael Curry. Walk together, children. Don't you get weary. Walk together, children. Don't you get weary. Oh, walk together, children. Don't you get weary. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land.